Good afternoon. This presentation is about creating high-performance teams for virtual and face-to-face organizations. My name is Chris, and my fellow teammates are Joshua, Laura, Amy, and Tanya. The purpose of this presentation is to help a Fortune 500 company's executive leaders ensure that their teams are functioning effectively. First, we will describe our consulting philosophy. Then we will instruct the difference between groups and teams, barriers and challenges, and best practices for both virtual and face-to-face teams. Drucker, who was a Fortune 500 consultant, instructed that consultants should attempt to inspire change but will not be able to create it for the company. That rests solely on the shoulders of the executive leaders. Horstman, 2012. We will provide the tools and techniques for leading teams in the virtual and face-to-face settings. Every situation is different, and it will be up to the executives for how and when they decide to use these instructions. Managers and leaders will need to use reciprocal interdependence, which Edmondson 2012 described as an organization's ability to coordinate and communicate back and forth to adapt during complex environments.
First, a basic understanding of what a team is needs to be clarified. While Henry Ford's invention of the assembly line is an example of organization to execute, we are looking to do more than just organize and execute for your company. Creswell, 2018. A team is a number of individuals that work together towards a common goal, but an effective and efficient team does much more. According to Creswell, 2018, effective teams involve trust, the ability to learn and adapt, they feel psychologically safe in their work environment, and they are able to create and produce for their organization, and they have clear goals.
Not all groups are teams. Edmondson 2012. Groups typically delegate work and have structured leadership models. Katzenbach and Smith, 2013.
This is Joshua Critchfield. It's been an interesting process going through this project and seeing how we work as a virtual team. We have been very decentralized. Face-to-face teams have different problems than virtual teams, but they still do have problems. Things like status, things like environment. In a face-to-face team, in a group environment, people who don't feel Edmondson's four pillars of effective teaming: speaking up, collaboration, experimentation, and reflection. Environment is extraordinarily important. You have to give people the ability to express themselves. This is all down to leadership. Creating an environment where people can collaborate is the same as creating an environment where people can express themselves. People need to feel safe in order to share their own ideas. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Winston Churchill. It says, "Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Creating that kind of environment is the first. Reflection is as important as every other step. You have to take the time to evaluate what has worked and what hasn't in your group environment to achieve the goal. Success does not happen overnight. Teams are a fantastic way to bring people from different backgrounds with a different set of skills to achieve a goal. But in order for that to happen, it all has to start from the very top. A leader has to do a very specific set of actions to create an environment where success is possible. Teams are not an easy thing to do. Teaming itself is not an easy thing to do. But when done right, it can be very successful.
When teams work together, they can encounter barriers and challenges. It is important to consider the types of boundaries that influence team members and create challenges in their work. These include physical distance or the separation and diversity among team members, such as the difference in physical locations. It can also include status boundaries that refer to the physical, power position, or cultural disparities among team members. You may find that most common differences in power structure are ethnic background and professional status. The other boundary has to do with knowledge. It can create boundaries through member differences in educational background, experience level, and domains of expertise. Knowledge boundaries among team members can inspire alliances to build among similar trains of thought, sometimes preventing teammates from sharing their viewpoints. Face to face teams encounter challenges that are unique to the fact that they work side by side each other. These include a fear of leadership. It's important that teams develop a circle of safety to try to avoid this fear, and that starts with the behaviors of your leaders. If your teams fear their leaders, you risk nurturing people so that they are too careful about protecting their own interests. You want them to collaborate and communicate with each other, and you want that to be the focus. Another challenge is that signs of defensiveness can develop. People are naturally vulnerable and so can become defensive when confronted with conflicts. It's important to stress this fact to your team so that they can learn to recognize the signs of defensiveness and try to prevent them. The other one has to do with interpersonal challenges or a failure to accept strengths and weaknesses. For example, a team member may become frustrated with another's lack of technical knowledge, or maybe another may resent a teammate's constant correction of his grammar. These are some of the things to think about regarding face-to-face team challenges. Virtual teams, or teams that work apart from each other, encounter even more challenges. Physical distance barriers can make it difficult for teams to share information that might be easier in a face to face setting. In this way, they can encounter an out of sight, out of mind mentality, and this can derail brainstorming and problem solving. Sometimes, as is most likely the case in your large firm, teams from a variety of cultures must work together to solve problems. Multiculturalism can cause friction from variations in direct and indirect communication styles, issues with understanding accents, different ideas regarding authoritative figures, and even different paces for making decisions within the team. And lastly, for virtual teams, knowledge boundaries can create challenges. Different groups within the same company can hold tacit knowledge that other groups don't necessarily automatically understand. It might include information about supplier behavior, certain estimations about the future behavior of the economy, or even whether a piece of technology does not work within their intranet. The difficult part about tacit knowledge barriers is that they are often not obvious, so teams may not understand why they have difficulties. These are some of the challenges and barriers that your teams can face as they work to improve their processes.
So, you might be wondering what practices and mindsets your company needs to implement in order to have effective face-to-face and virtual teams, right? Here are a few items that are related to effective teams. First, communication. According to Creswell 2018, today's organizations involve what's called reciprocal interdependence, where back and forth communication and coordination are essential to getting the work done. This may seem like a short and simple item to check off your list in creating effective teams, but it deserves a lot of attention. Creswell 2018 states that it is important to accommodate to many different types of areas of expertise, and also how individuals think differently. Your company will need to be prepared that there will be conflicts within teams, but awareness of differences by all parties assists in obtaining solutions. So, you might be wondering what practices and mindsets your company needs to implement in order to have effective face-to-face and virtual teams, right? Here are a few items that are related to effective teams. First, communication. According to Creswell 2018, today's organizations involve what's called reciprocal interdependence, where back and forth communication and coordination are essential to getting work done. This may seem like a short and simple item to check off on your list in creating effective teams, but it deserves a lot of attention. Creswell 2018 states that it is important to accommodate to many different types of areas of expertise, and also how certain individuals think differently from one another. Your company will need to be prepared that there will be conflicts within teams, but awareness of differences by all parties will assist in obtaining solutions. Next, as Creswell 2018 also states, creating an environment that is psychologically safe for all employees is essential for effective teaming. What will a psychologically safe work environment do for your company? It will allow for your team members to grow, learn, produce, and create. Creswell 2018 states that learning from failure is very useful and important, and in order for your organization to learn from their failures, all members must feel safe to fail, then to communicate and learn from the said failure. Finally, allowing room for your team members to speak up. This will only be possible if psychological safety is first established. As these two practices are closely linked, you will want to implement a specific time and space for your organization's teams to allow all members to share their thoughts and ideas. Offering many different avenues for employees to speak up is a smart option. Your organization must prepare for what it takes to be an effective team. While we have covered some important topics for creating successful teams, there is not a foolproof answer to forming highly efficient and effective teams. Your company should think of preparing yourself for obstacles in your company's teaming future, much like chefs do to prepare for a large and busy dinner to be served. Before that meal, chefs will need to ensure that they have all of their ingredients prepped and ready, so when dinner time hits, their operation has all the tools prepped and ready for success. We just reviewed some of the do's of teaming, and now we will cover some important actions and operations your company will want to avoid in order to ensure your organization's teams are functioning effectively. First, the first don't of teaming we'll cover is closely linked to one of the do's of teaming that we just covered. That is the importance of psychological safety. So what happens when psychological safety is not present within a team? Fear. One important subject is that of fear. Creswell 2018 states that fear has been used in the past to motivate employees. This method crippled employees' ability to contribute and be a part of an effective team. Why is avoiding fear so important to your organization's success? Your employees will be paralyzed and unable to create and produce. According to David Kelly's 2012 TED Talk, he explains how fear of judgment can stop our creative efforts. Next, identify and analyze best practices to create high-performing teams, both face-to-face and virtual teams. According to Cotu 2013, Hackman's research shows that there is much to be said about how a team will operate with one another, how they will function, based on their first interactions or first meeting with one another. Give time and attention to the first meetings of your teams. While it may not always be permissible for members of a virtual team to meet in person, pay attention to opportunities for virtual teams to meet one another face-to-face, and those opportunities should be taken advantage of.
Psychological safety in virtual teams and face-to-face teams is another best practice that is necessary to be deployed in your organization. All great teams have this in common to accelerate the 4 pillars of teaming. Psychological safety, according to Edmondson, is an essential element of teaming that succeeds in today's complex and uncertain world. Furthermore, Edmondson 2012 states that psychological safety describes a climate in which people feel free to express relevant thoughts and feelings without fear of being penalized. Psychological safety environments are crucial to both face-to-face and virtual teams. They create the environment that empowers trust, seeks to create respect, allows members to offer new ideas, encourages necessary feedback, and allows team members the willingness to fail. It produces clarity of thought from that failure and it mitigates the failure. It endorses speaking up by all members of the team and it increases accountability. Overall, psychological safety releases others from feeling the need to manage interpersonal risk to retain a good image, according to Edmondson 2012. It limits groupthink, where team members maintain the status quo to keep from disturbing the group harmony. And it alleviates the pressures of interpersonal risks involving being seen as unable or incompetent or being viewed as negative and lessening of the feelings of being disruptive, according to Edmondson 2012. With a focus in virtual teaming, knowledge sharing technologies for virtual teaming efficacy are significant. According to Kelman 2016, virtual teaming has for many years been focused in a silo where limitations in learning and knowledge are put upon many of the team members. However, according to Kelman, the suggestion of introducing a social intranet that incorporates calendars, knowledge banks, learning accessories, and incorporating that knowledge allow for the advancement of the teaming efficacy. Overall, the best practice of creating knowledge sharing technologies and outlets for virtual teams is crucial for cross functional teams involving occupational and expertise differences that combine the different sets of highly specialized skills into one cohesive group. Edmondson 2012. Edmondson 2012 stated that knowledge sharing when involving virtual teams is a crucial mandate to overcome boundaries that involve organizational and occupational interactions because the knowledge sharing technologies seek to eliminate the barriers and expand knowledge banks to all team members. Combining occupation and organization through knowledge sharing lessens the interpersonal complexities of experience and forges a cohesive collective of team members with equal access to knowledge sharing through technology outlets like that of the social intranet. In summary, for the best practices suggestive for both virtual and face to face teaming are the focus of the